Okay, I've never had good typing technique. I've always had to do the hunt and peck technique. And I've always been that kind of typer, which means that I'm not very fast. And I get typing fatigue as I go. So I decided to rectify that by getting a mechanical keyboard and relearning how to type. I figured since it felt different than a membrane style keyboard, I would need to learn how to, type a little bit differently anyway. And so I would just go ahead and relearn all of it. But I ran into a problem because I recently switched over to Mac as my main operating system. And since Mac users typically aren't gamers, there isn't like a huge selection of options for mechanical keyboards out there, for me at least, and at least not at first glance. Now, there is one main brand that supplies mechanical keyboards to Mac users, and that is Keychron. Now, if you watch like MKBHD videos, he uses a Keychron keyboard, and obviously he's a huge Mac fan, so I figured that was a probably good source. And I don't know why there aren't more companies that have Mac layouts. I feel like it's a huge hole in the market that would be pretty easy to fill. But anyway, I decided to buy a Keychron keyboard. Specifically, I bought the Keychron K4. Now, Keychron has a bunch of different models, and the K4 is a 96% layout, which means it has all of the keys of a 100% layout, like the number pad, or at least as far as I can tell, but it makes some of the keys smaller and smushes everything together, so it's just a massive mess of keys, right? Now, I work with a lot of spreadsheets, so for me, having the number pad was kind of a big deal. But Keychron makes a bunch of different models, and you totally don't need to get the K4. The results will probably be the same if you use the K6 or the K2, which I think are the more popular models. Now, really quick, can I go on a little rant for just a bit? If you're new to mechanical keyboards, there is a lot of information out there to learn, and there are very few resources that do a pretty good job of explaining it. Things, you just kind of need to like watch a ton of videos and read a bunch of articles and slowly just like absorb the information that you're looking for. And I think that that's just like super dumb. Not a lot of beginner friendly content. Anyway, that rant over, right? I just bring that up because the next part of the review of the Keychron K4 contains some technical jargon, and if any of that gets confusing, just let me know in the comments below. I'd be happy to make another video or several explaining what everything means. Let's get into the specs of the K4. Like I mentioned before, the keyboard is a 96% layout, which is fine, right? But I think I would have preferred a 100% layout just for the space between the keys, but also because if I ever want to like switch keycaps out, because you can pull these keycaps off, Keychron gives you a key puller. It's easier to find keycaps for a 100% keyboard layout than it is for the 96%. And that's because of these 1U size utility keys to the right of the spacebar here. They're smaller, and so it's harder to find those. Now, the keyboard is using Gateron red switches, which are linear switches and kind of a knockoff of Cherry MX red switches. They make your keyboard less clicky and a little more thocky because there's just no bump keeping you from pushing the key all the way down. There's no tactile feedback. And I really wish I would have considered this a little bit more, because even though the reds are the most popular kind of switches on the Keychrons, I think I'd prefer a tactile switch, which are still pretty quiet, but from what I can tell, they offer that tactile bump and gives you that feedback, which I think would stop me from pressing the keys down so hard. As it stands, specifically my thumb gets fatigued from bottoming out on the keyboard, and I think it could be a better experience if I went with tactile. Also, it's a little bit more of a familiar experience to what I'm used to. Let's also talk about the Keycap profile. I think Keychron is using, from what I can tell, it's an OEM keycap profile, which feels pretty retro, but it also has a pretty aggressive scoop, as you can see, towards the middle, and I'm not super used to that, and I'm not sure I like it. Maybe I just need to get used to it. I think I'd prefer like a more flat one, or maybe I should just get used to OEM, but that's just my take, is that it's not something I'm really used to, even though OEM is pretty popular. Now, the keyboard is plastic, which I totally don't mind. I actually like it that way. It's high quality polycarbonate, so it's pretty darn rigid, and I don't feel like I need to have an aluminum keyboard in the slightest. But there are aluminum keyboard cases out there, these aluminum part of this base right here. They're just not very cheap, right? This is also a wireless keyboard, which I thought was a huge deal. It's a huge godsend. I hate wires of any kinds, and so having this be wireless is just super awesome. In fact, it's actually Bluetooth, and you can pair it up to 3 different Bluetooth or 3 different machines at the same time that you can switch between. I don't think my keyboard is a hot swappable set, but Keychron does make hot swappable keyboards of this model, which costs like $10 more. I think I got mine for $59. However, they do provide a keycap Polar with this one, so you can switch from Mac to Windows if you would like. And they have like the keycaps that you can switch out to make it work for Windows as well as Mac. So that's kind of cool. All right, finally, let's talk about the lighting. Okay, there are a bunch of different lighting styles. Let me turn this on really here. There are a bunch of different lighting styles. And it comes in RGB as well. I just got this this white backlight, so you can toggle through them just with this right here. Needless to say, there are just a bunch of different lighting modes that you can go. I just like the plain white, and I just keep it on, generally speaking, because I think it's kind of distracting to see a bunch of lights flashing down as I'm typing. But anyway, there are a bunch of different lighting styles that you can go with this, and they all have really nice backlight that shows through the keys, by the way. But the real question is, how does it type? Does it feel good? Does it make me type faster, or does it sound awesome, or something like that, right? And while I certainly don't think it makes me a faster typer by any stretch of the imagination, it is more fun to type on. Like I mentioned earlier, the red switches and my aggressive typing style means that I get finger fatigue, but I do find myself wanting to use the keyboard a lot because it's just fun to use. I think I may return this model specifically and get a hot swappable brown switches keyboard to see if I like that and make sure it's full size, right? Keychron makes that, I think it's the Q1 or something like that. So I think I'd prefer that because you can mod them pretty easily too. And so I think I might switch to that. I also think this sounds really good. I'm not a keyboard snob, right? And I also am not like an audiophile at all. So I don't mind if there's a little bit of rattle, as you can kind of see, and a little bit of scratchiness on the keyboard, just as long as there isn't too much. But let me give you a sound test just so you know what things sound like stock, because I've not modified this at all. But before I do that, go ahead and hit the like button, since there's nothing really better to do while you're sitting here listening to a typing test. All right, here we go. Here's the sound. All right, so final thoughts. I think the Keychron keyboard is a great way to get started in the mechanical keyboard space if you're interested, especially if you're a Mac user. Anything else of comparable quality that you can find online for Mac will probably cost you like $50 more than what you'll pay for the K4 or any Keychron keyboard, and it's cheaper than the Magic keyboard from Apple anyway, and it's just higher quality. I think if you're also getting started, go to like a local nerd store like Best Buy and try a few different keyboards out to see what kind of switches you like, because you can probably find ones that are like, you know, brown switches or red switches or blue switches. So go ahead and try a few out. That way you know what, you know, you're getting when you buy a keyboard online, right? Now, people talk about mechanical keyboards like it's some expensive, really like hobby to get into. And I guess it's not the cheapest hobby to get into, but honestly, like people build cars for hobbies, right? And those are like thousands of dollars. So I think this hobby is actually probably just fine, right? I mean, you can get a fun keycap set for like $50 or less, right? One that you can totally mod and whatnot. And that changes everything about how your keyboard looks. And personalizing the thing that you interface with the most when you use your computer seems like a pretty worthwhile investment to me. So I don't think it's as bad as people make it out to be. I mean, can you blow $500 on a keyboard? Yeah, you can. Is that like the best use of money? Maybe not, but a keyboard But that keyboard is probably one that you'll build yourself. You'll spend hours of time working on and then years typing on. So it's not that bad of an investment, even when you look at it, as like a $500 thing. It'll probably outlive your computer. So that may put things into perspective, right? Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you're looking for a mechanical keyboard, I say start with Keychron. They're stylish, they'll at least give you your bearings in the space and give you an idea of what to expect. And I think they're a lot of fun to type on. So if you want more information on how to build a mechanical keyboard, what everything means, all the inner parts and things like that, go ahead and let me know in the comments below. I'd be happy to make that video for you. But until next time, we'll see you around. Thanks so much.